My name is Dan Finucane, and I'm currently a regent. I love folk music, blues music, and I love singing and playing with other people.
My name is Ian Peoples. I'm a Jesuit regent. I'm kind of a football fanatic. Most of my weekends are spent watching at least a few games. I'm probably one of the biggest Lionel Messi fans.
Welcome back to MAGISTALK, where we explore the question, what is God calling me to today? My name is Dan Finucane, and I'm joined by my friend and Jesuit brother, Ian Peoples, and we are very honored today to have a guest with us, Cisco Woods.
Cisco is the Chief Executive Officer of Cisco Construction Company and founder of Old Belize Recreation Center, located on the outskirts of Belize City, which I still haven't got to visit yet, so we're working on that. Cisco sits on the board of the Colby Foundation, which runs Belize Central Prison, where Dan and I serve as chaplains. Above all, though, Cisco is a servant leader who is building up Belize, and not just through his construction company, but also through his attention to at-risk people, specifically guys in the south side of Belize City. Cisco is someone who embodies the works of mercy that we spoke of on our last episode in the work that he does. So Cisco, thanks so much for being with us today. It's great to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And Cisco, we've worked together a little bit. Obviously, we're at Belize Central Prison, where we've interacted with you there. You've spoken with the Jesuit community several times about your work. And I'm just wondering, to begin our questions, what role did your faith play in your upbringing, and how does it play in your role now as a successful business owner here in Belize?
That's a good one. I've always been to church, so God has been a part of my life from day one, pretty much. Going to church every Sunday, my parents took me, and I believed in God from an early age. In fact, I can remember the first time I prayed and I got an answer, and I was like, wow, it's true. It's not magic, but it's prayer, and prayer was answered. So I've been a strong believer in God, and I think it just got even stronger in my later years. I'd say my 40s, I really started to see how powerful God can work, and how I just had blinders on the whole time. And so that just, after I got 40, 41, 42, things started happening, and I just started to understand how powerful God was. So,
was there any specific event that happened in your 40s that really woke that up in you?
Lots of different stuff that happened. My first one at 6 years old, I can remember I was playing at my grandmother's house, and my knee just started seizing up, just froze up, and I had to sit down. I couldn't walk, and I said, God, please, can you help me? I need to, take this away. And before I knew it, I was walking again, and I remember that to this day. I can remember exact room I was in, who was around, who I was playing with. That's how vivid it was. And throughout my entire life, I prayed and I could see answers. It's just that the depth, the more complex the problems got later on in years, it didn't matter. If you prayed and you meant it, and you got on your knees or whatever you had to do, and you do a sincere prayer, it was always answered, always answered.
And could you say a little bit about how your faith has played a role in your work, both your business and the work that kind of extends out of your business?
Okay. Well, I am a big believer of when you serve and you do for others, you don't have to worry too much about you or your business. Things will work. You still have to work. You still have to pay attention and do your homework and get up early and put in your sweat. But if you're also giving at the same time, things just work. Things just work. We've had a lot of rough times in all the companies that we're involved with, and including the prison. But you just don't stop. You just keep doing what you know is right. Always do what's right, and things will work out. It's scary sometimes, very scary. You wonder how you'll make payroll. You wonder what the next job will be. you wonder, why is this person giving us such a hard time, whatever it is. And but you just keep on doing good, you keep on doing right, and that's really what the faith part really comes in. You just can't give up, you can't get down under the dark clouds. You just have to always look forward and look for the sunshine type of thing. Raise your head above the clouds. But prayer a lot helps me with that. Helps me see through those dark clouds, just by praying to God and get me through this day, get me through tomorrow, and
Cisco,
how it works.
You bring up Belize Central Prison, the work at the prison, and the Kolbe Foundation, right, which is named after Saint Maximilian Kolbe, a saint who died in Auschwitz, a concentration camp during World War II. And what was the role of faith behind the foundation of Belize Central Prison, of the Kolbe Foundation? Can you say a word about that? Because I know your family is so rooted in such an important part to play in Kolbe Foundation.
Well, my dad was really he was the one, and I was just there supporting my dad. I can remember the day my dad was asked to look at the prison and see where they can help. As a businessman, as a Rotarian, he was asked to go in there and see how can we make this place better, because it was really terrible. And I didn't like the idea at all at the time, but I love my dad, so I was supporting my dad. So I was just right there with him, whatever he asked me to do. He relied on me a lot for more operations, anything with operations, whether it was a machine or looking at a building or construction, he would ask me to task me out with that. So I went along with him on that, and I told him, Dad, this is scary stuff, you sure? Are you okay with this? And that he was dead set. He had a vision, he had a mission, and he was not gonna let anybody tell him no. He had super faith. The faith I have, he had it times 10, for sure. He was amazing like that. But that prison thing, what we met there, and I think what got my dad so hooked on it, he saw humans that were just left out there, they had no hope, and that really hurt my dad. To see men, very smart men, very strong men, very young men, just sitting in a cell doing nothing with no hope at all, that just drove him mad. And he knew he could make it a better place. He knew he could help those guys, and that was his driving factor there.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about last week is the corporal works of mercy, and one of those corporal works is visiting the imprisoned. And I think your dad went above and beyond, as you did, in actually wanting to improve their conditions there. And I know that's remembered by the men there. John Woods, the memorial to your father, is right there at the prison. Dan and I pass it every day, so I know he's still praying for us and interceding for us, right? That's right. I trust your dad's still working for Kolbe Foundation, right? Yeah. And I know also I have a little backstory on your family history. Can you say a little bit about maybe your uncle, whom your dad was so close to, and who was a Maryknoll priest, correct?
Correct.
Can you just say a word about him and maybe the relationship that he and your dad had and how he inspired your dad?
Yeah, very good. Uncle Billy, Padre Guillermo, as he's known in Guatemala, was my dad's hero. He was always a pusher and just go 100%. Whatever he did, it was 100%, not 99. It was 100. And he became a priest. He went to Guatemala, saw the terrible situation there where there was a lot of poverty, and he was able to form cooperatives, get land, go fundraise in Houston, get money, buy large tracts of land, and set up cooperatives, set up 40-acre plots to each family, and created several towns now. They're towns now. Back then they were just little villages, but now they're big towns. And my dad went to work with him for a little bit. He did several trips to Guatemala, and my uncle got my dad a job as a pilot to help him with the project in Guatemala, and that ended up helping somebody here in Belize. That's how my dad ended up here. But that was my dad's hero and inspiration. And I think when my dad saw the prison, how it was, he remembered my uncle Billy and said, maybe we can do something similar here in Belize with the prison. Not regular farmers or folks out there, but with the inmates. And I'm sure that was his main inspiration. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that we did at the prison, like the radio station and improving the food right away, are some of the main things that my uncle did right away. He put up a radio station so they could communicate with people. They could understand what the day was going to be like, what they were going to do, and motivation as well.
You talked a bit earlier about, you used the word hope, that hope was absent when your dad took a look at Belize Central, and that was something through these efforts, the radio program and other efforts at the prison. Could you share with us maybe a story or two where you've seen hope kind of grow at Belize Central over the years that Colby's been running the prison?
Yeah, I think it's one of the core formulas there at the prison is to let these guys know there's so much better opportunity out there if you just change your mindset. The way you talk to somebody. In fact, several times when I interview inmates that have been released, I talk to them and I say, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong too? You can tell me, you're not in prison anymore. You can tell me what are we doing wrong and what are we doing right? And they always answer. They really appreciate when the guards treat them with respect, treat them like a dad that they probably never had, or treat them like a good uncle or a big brother. They always did that, and that's really, they look forward to that. They really appreciate that respect, because most of them never got that when they were growing up as kids. They never had that person that was really looking out for them. So that kind of is right there as hope. You're treating people and telling them that they can be all they can be, and God created you special. God, you have a gift. Everybody has that gift, and that gives them hope. That makes them think that they can become this great person that they always wanted to be, or like that hero that they have. So that hope right there, that instilling it in them every day through interacting with the inmates, I think that's core to our success at Colby, definitely, for sure. Dad did that with me. He'd always, whatever project came up and I'd be there fighting at it and struggling, he'd come and say, that's pretty good, that looks good. He might have been not telling the whole full truth, but for me, that gave me the push to continue and make it 100%. Yeah, so hope is so important in anything you do, whether it's the old Belize, whether it's building a road with the employees and the employer. We got to keep it positive all the time, and we're going to get through it, and we're going to do a good job, and it'll all work out. Whatever challenges you're facing, it'll work out.
Yeah, and I think that's in my work at the prison so far, especially with the youth, that question of how do we instill hope, right? And how do we give hope to people there, because we know they're facing such difficult situations in their lives on the outside, and especially the young people I work with, right? They're born into situations where they aren't given many options besides, gang involvement and extreme poverty makes it easy maybe to make bad choices that land them in prison. So hope is such an important part of this work at Colby, and so I appreciate the fact that that respect and that guidance that guards can give, and that I think Dan and I try to provide as well. Try to be either a big brother or an uncle or father. I mean, we're younger. I don't know if we can be any of the guys' dads in there, but we can be a big brother maybe.
Or a little brother in some cases.
Or a little brother in some cases. That's right. But speaking of hope, also when these guys get out, a lot of the situations. They'll face the same things that landed them in there. And I know that now you work with gang-affiliated guys, and you're trying to instill in them some opportunities to choose differently and to build up their lives in a different way. Can you just describe maybe some of that work and what motivated you to start working with these at-risk people, specifically in the south side of Belize City, where there's so many gangs active there?
Correct. Well, it started with prison and seeing men go back out into the environment that they came from, and it's very hard for them to be successful if they go right back into an environment that they, that led them to be at prison in the first place. So another thing that we wanted to do with the work on the outside of the prison is to try to catch folks before they do something that will make them go to prison. So what helped us a lot is because they know us from the prison, they know that we mean well, we're able to almost be able to call anybody and say, hey, we have this idea, would you like to participate? And most of them agree right away. What we did is we target some of the leaders in the community with these at-risk men, and we take them on a retreat and we talk about everything. Remember, they haven't been, well, most of them have been to prison, but these are guys that are out there in the streets living. So we go through an overnight retreat and we talk about everything from partnerships with God, leadership, things that make men fail, the commandments, power of prayer, just stuff that we all need to hear, especially men, well, everybody. And we talk about things that they think that they could do. And we develop those ideas, and then we go out. It's not just myself. I have a group, the Love Foundation, and then some of the board members from the Colby Foundation, the CEO, the CFO. We'll all tackle it together. And we try to support these guys in the business that they would like to do. And it's like an incubator. They want to do a car wash, well, we start to look for the pressure washers, we look for the vacuum cleaners, the generators, whatever they need to do that business properly. If they want to do a water making plant, we go source everything, we build a shed so that they can sell water. One group put up a mechanic shop. We got them their tools, we put up the shed, put in the compressor, the electricity, and they have a mechanic shop. We've done urban gardens where they grow vegetables and they get children and teach them how to grow vegetables. We have one group that will be doing a farming. He's got a farm out on the Western Highway, and he's also taking kids out there to do farming on site. So it's a broad variety of stuff, but they come up with the idea and then we just support. We get information, we get folks that can teach financial literacy or personal finance. Oh, barbecuing is a big thing too. And Saturdays is like barbecue day in Belize. So we set each one of them up with a barbecue pit, then do the math, show them the cost of the chicken, cost of the coleslaw, cost of the tortillas, cost of the styrofoam plate, and do the math with them so that they can see what they can make. It's important for them to know that, understand the business end of it, so that it's sustainable. So every Saturday, some of these groups, they have their barbecue sales and they make, $300-400. It's income, and that helps a lot of the guys from the community. It's a little challenging because there's so much men from these groups that need help. So not all of them, there's not enough work for everybody, but they share it. These guys, they share it. So this group will come on Mondays, this group can work Tuesdays, this other group can work on Wednesdays, and they share it up amongst themselves and they survive, and they have an alternate good form of income. And that it definitely is working. We're really proud of the men. It's been tough. They've had some challenging days, but in that retreat, we even go through one of the courses is on perseverance and teamwork. And they remember that course very well. They said, man, we had 1 week where we didn't even make $1, but we just remembered that course and we hung in there, and then the following day, they made up for all the other days. So they just hung in there, and that's where that perseverance course comes in.
And I've been on this retreat, and that perseverance course is difficult because it involves literally climbing a mountain.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
we're out there, out of district, and we're climbing a mountain. I remember one of the ones, I've been on 2 so far, and one of the ones we were at when it was raining really hard, and there was lightning.
Correct.
And I heard that lightning strike, and I was like, all right, I'm going back down. And so I went back down, but almost all the guys, and I think including yourself, you guys kept going up, you know, lightning or no lightning, you were going to reach the top of that mountain. And so that was really a good lesson on perseverance. maybe one that I failed, but
No, you did good. You did good.
Hopefully, I can get
You
another
made me
chance.
think safety. See, I was counting every time I hear the sound. I know you see the if you see the flash, and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you know how many miles away the actual strike is.
Yeah, that's the distance. Yeah. I think one, I heard the flash, or I saw the flash, and then I heard the sound, and I was like,
It was close.
maybe 2 seconds apart, and I was like, all right, I got it.
Too close.
I'm going down on this one.
Yes, yeah.
But
Yeah.
That's smart. You were just being smart. We need to cover
But everyone
that
was
in the
safe.
course.
Everyone was safe. Everyone got up. Everyone got back down. It was all good. Yes.
Yeah.
Something I appreciated, Cisco, and what you were just saying is that a lot of these guys, they have concrete plans that they want to carry out, and it's often a lack of resources. And that's something that I've certainly seen talking with guys. They often have plans. I've talked to guys who want to do pig farming. They want to do farming of some sort of crop. And they're trying to scheme and figure out, okay, how can I actually start? And I think it goes back to what you said earlier about being able to see these guys as human beings. And that there's something very humanizing about saying, you have your own dreams, and how can we help to bring those dreams into reality? And I guess that leads to maybe a much broader question, but I think one that kind of gets back at the works of mercy that we talked about on our last episode, which is, how can the church as a whole in Belize do this kind of work, to kind of humanize people, to see them where they are and help them, kind of give them a hand up, so to speak. What are some pieces of advice you'd have for the church in that regard?
That's a good one, because the church does so much good already. One of the groups that we work with, the church took them in. They had a Christmas dinner for them. They've been mentoring them and getting them to come to church on Sundays. On a whole, what I like is when, I go to church for the message, and it's like my weekly. I need to hear that weekly message, what that challenge is, and that challenge could last me a lifetime. Getting the message across for me is the most important thing. And for a lot of the men that I work with, they love analogies. You have to put that message into real life experiences that they can relate to. And it's the same message, whether you're an executive at BTL or at Cisco or anywhere, or a guy just sweeping the streets. It doesn't matter. The message is core. It applies to a human being, is what I'm trying to say. But unless it's given in a way that they can understand it, if you tell them not in their language or in their form that they understand it, then it's meaningless. So I would say that getting that message across is so important. That church should be the one giving the hope and giving the ways and the example and making that message stay in the mind. I would think that would be one of the best ways. I mean, everybody's limited on how much they can do. It'd be great to have the church going out there and every day and stopping at these hubs and stopping in the neighborhoods and stuff, but they're limited with what they can do. It's easier for folks to go to the church and get that message at the church. But getting that message across in the way that folks would understand is so important, I think. But the churches, all of them, are doing a lot of good things. They don't go around and boast about it, so you don't hear about it. But the folks they work with, they know, and God knows.
And I think the church you brought up, right, is it should be named, because we've heard you talk about this particular church before. Yeah. I think it's Church of the Nazarene.
It's a Nazarene church right there in Albert Street.
Yeah, so it's not a Catholic church, so we can learn from our brothers and sisters in Christ, because that is a church, and they're doing really real outreach to guys.
Yeah, and Father Dan went to where these guys live, and I think he spent a night there in their building to see how they lived as a family, and the whole entire church has worked with them.
So I think that lesson also, like you're saying, that they need to get the message, and sometimes guys aren't going to come to church, because one thing that we've heard a lot in our synodal conversations, where we're interviewing a lot of people about the church, a lot of people feel like they can't enter into churches because they feel judged, right? And or they're not wearing the right things, or they don't speak the right way. Whatever it is, they feel judged, and so they kind of stay out of the churches sometimes. So I think the example that you gave with Church of the Nazarene, and this example of them needing to receive that message, well, what's the best way for the church to get it, and maybe to be more visible outside the four walls, right? Outside the four walls, and so that message can be embodied, right? Because we have this incarnational spirituality, right? That God wants to be with us, right? Physically, and I think we need to make sure we're doing the same as the body of Christ, right? And so I love that the power of that, of being able to proclaim the word in a way that people can understand, right?
And these guys are so smart. These guys can look at your face, they can look at the way you talk, they look at your eyes, they look at your expressions, they can tell if you're being sincere or not. And so they know if you're trying to just pull a fast one or just trying to, they know. They can read very well.
I know exactly what you're talking about with the guys at Wagner's Youth Facility. These are kids, so they're naturally, I think, intuitive also of just older folks, and if they're being authentic, and they will, and the feedback they give you will reflect what they think of you, and so it's a good thing to take to our examine at the end of the day of like, how are the youth responsive, or just the folks and the men that we work with in general. I think they really are. They can pick up on it.
If you're sincere, they'll know right away, and you'll have them. They'll give you what you ask for. They'll tell you. They'll tell you exactly how they feel, and that's real. I learned that very quickly with these guys. They're so smart, so smart.
Yeah, and I think that's an important piece that I've picked up doing this ministry too, is I think it's easy, from the outside looking in to say, well, what's the level of education here? And to just stop there. Yeah. But I think, there's a difference between being educated, certainly, and being intelligent. Yeah. And I think that what you're pointing out is definitely our experience, that these are men who are very intelligent, and maybe they lack some education. But if they're given that opportunity, they can actually do a lot of good, and I think that's good news. And I think that's news that maybe sometimes we don't think can come out of a place like a prison, or from people who have spent time in prison or spent time in a gang, that they're capable of good. But I think your work is testament to the fact that it's very possible, and it's happening. Which is just great.
Yeah, these groups of men, the at-risk men, they're like families, and they're the families that they never had when they were growing up, and it's what draws a lot of other younger men to that group. It's that togetherness, it's that brother that will look out for you, it's that uncle figure, it's that father figure that will make sure you're never hungry and you have what you need. And people don't see that. They just think a gang, and just horrible things, but these guys take care of their own, and they take care of the community too. I see where they will make sure, if they know somebody that's starving, they will make sure that person has food. Whether it's an older lady or an older gentleman, they will look out. They know a family where they don't have enough money to send their kids to the school, they will actually provide a scholarship. Sadly, through maybe some illegal activities, but they will be putting kids to school. I know several of the groups that do that, and a lot. So it's always humbling for me to see how these guys operate and see how they know each other well. I'll be honest with you, a lot of families, good friends of mine, could learn from these fellas and how they take care of each other. They really look out for one another.
And that's not something we think about often, not something I think about. For sure, the way that the good desires that these guys have and that they're doing, and it's also alongside maybe some means that aren't good, right? Especially when that violence spills over and when there's the retaliation and violence that we see in the streets a lot. But the fact that there is that good desire there, and it's almost like if God wants to use that desire that these guys have. God wants to reorient it back towards, a fuller good, right? Because they desire to serve their community, like you're talking about. They desire to have a family. They desire to take care of one another. And I think that the community also needs to affirm that desire, right? Because God speaks through the community, right? That's how God's voice is often proclaimed to people, is through the community. And so what is our community, the community of Belize, what is it saying to these men and women who are involved in the streets? Sometimes it's that hopelessness is sometimes coming from the community, where we're not choosing to be the voice of God, we're choosing to be the voice of maybe the accuser sometimes. And so I think it's up to the community also to see the good that is there and to affirm that good so as to encourage it, right? And I think that's something that you're doing and something that I really respect about your work. So thank you. And speaking of the community, the church, one question we wanted to ask is, who is someone in the church, whether in Belize or elsewhere at the Universal Church, that inspires you, and why?
That's a good one. There's so many good folks out there, and I've been inspired by many of them. But if we really want to go to the top, I like Pope Francis. He's pretty neat. I saw the movie. I can't remember the exact name, but there's a movie made on him and how he came up through the ranks. He didn't want to be the Pope. He really didn't want to be the Pope. He didn't want that job, but the existing Pope at the time knew he was the guy. He knew that's what the Catholic Church needed. They needed somebody like Pope Francis. And there's several stories when he was coming up that really just made me open my eyes and saw what kind of guy. I listened, even though it's not in English, I don't know what it is, but they translate it, and his messages are so real, and it applies to all of us, whether you're that big top executive or that guy cleaning the drains. It speaks to you. And that's pretty amazing. And that's why I reinforce, that's why what I'd like to see the church do is, how can we get that message to everybody, not just to one type. You got to put that message into analogies, you got to put it into a way that folks will understand, especially the folks in the at-risk areas. They need to get that message because the message is important. And
like you're saying, they're speaking, oftentimes they're speaking their own language, right? And so we need to make sure we're translating.
Correct.
That we're translating that message, right? Because if it's in a language that they can understand, like you said earlier, then it's not hitting home, right? But we know that the Word of God transforms hearts. And so if they're listening, if they're hearing that Word, then it's going to be transformed.
But the examples too, if you want to make me understand something, start talking about machines and trucks and horsepower and stuff. But for a cook, you need to talk kitchens and stoves and butane and salt and pepper. For a mechanic, you got to talk wrenches and oils. And so that analogy is so important. The message is core. That's constant. But the way we explain it should be something I think the churches could look at.
And it's something that Pope Francis himself is so good at. Right? Using the image of a field hospital or shepherds smelling like their sheep. I mean, those are very kind of gritty images, but they speak in a way that maybe higher theological language, as good as it might be, doesn't get to people. And I think that's one of the appeals that he has, and I think it gets at what you're talking about, meeting people where they are, in a way that they can hear, understand, and bring into their lives in a deeper way.
One of his ones that I can remember right off all the time is he says, if you buy food for your family with money gotten from illegal activities, you're feeding your family with dirty bread, right? And that's what bread is. Everybody eats bread, we eat that. So he put it in a way that, man, I'm eating that stuff that, illegal activities bought that bread. So it's the way it's put out there. It's so important. We could all relate to that bread scenario.
And I love that you named Pope Francis also, because one of the books that he wrote early on in his papacy was The Name of God is Mercy. And I think it's so appropriate that we have been talking about the works of mercy and also speaking with you, who I think in so many ways embody the works of mercy here in Belize. At least I don't want to, make you blush on camera, but you're a person that inspires me here to really serve the community. I think you're you're a man who walks the walk, right? And so thank you so much for being on our show. I think we've come about to the end of our time, but before we end, we always like to end our shows with a question that all of us answer. And our question today is, what's one of your favorite books and why?
That's a good one. I like biographies, and I think my all-time favorite was Steve Jobs, the guy that created the Apple phone. And he has an amazing story, and a lot of the other guys, Elon Musk and Warren Buffett, they might not have a strong Christian or church relationship, but they all had a want and a need to better the humans, civilization. Steve Jobs wanted that kids could pick up an iPad and just start learning, and so many children are learning from these tablets now. So it was something to improve humanity. This guy Elon Musk, he wants that we don't depend on oil so much. He wants that we can do interplanetary travel, and he's got some big visions there. But it's all stuff to make humanity better, to make life easier and nicer, and just better on the whole. So I think God will bless anybody that makes life better for humans. And so I like those biographies, I like those books. But that Steve Jobs one was very special, because he was really an inspiration to me, and the stories that he went through, I had a lot of similar stories, a lot of similar challenges. And one of his favorite things, when he was booted out of his own company, and when he was starting their Apple, he said that it was really a tough pill to swallow, but he says he thinks the patient needed it. So sometimes when tough stuff happens, there's a lesson in it. So you grow from it. You don't dwell in it. You grow. You see what you did wrong, and you think. So that's why that book is one of my favorite, Steve Jobs. Yeah.
Thanks. Dan, you got an answer?
I do. It was kind of hard to think of an answer, to be honest. But one of my favorites is a book by Father Greg Boyle, a fellow Jesuit, who does work with gang-involved men in Los Angeles, men and women, called Tattoos on the Heart. He's had a few books, but that's his first one. And I think for me, it's one of my favorites because of how he has two things that he talks about in the book that I go back to all the time. One, he has a chapter on success, and he says that success isn't about, financial success. It's not about kind of what you achieve, but it's about fidelity. And success is grounded in fidelity to one another, and ultimately to God. And the other thing he talks about is this idea of radical kinship, that the circle of compassion keeps getting extended because, he quotes Mother Teresa, one of the main problems with human beings is that we forget we belong to one another. We forget that we have these ties of family, of kin. And so any way that we can, extend the circle and invite people in, that's the key. And he's put that to use with men and women involved in gangs in Los Angeles, but I think it extends to a whole host of issues and communities here in Belize and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Ian?
Mine, again, it was kind of tough, but I think I'm going back to one that's a classic that I've read. It's not a terribly old book. It's called Poverty of Spirit. It's by theologian Johann Baptist Metz. And we talk about, the high theological language doesn't always hit home. And I think it is a book that's expressing high theology, but in words that most people can take in and understand. And it's all about Jesus's poverty of spirit and how he really embraced his humanity to its fullest, right? And following him, we will do the same, right? And in doing so, we also, are pursuing the path towards God, right? The path that Christ showed us, who is the way, the truth, and the life. So it's really about Jesus remaining faithful to the call to be human. and in doing so showed us God's love, right? And so that's a book that I return to a lot when I give reflections, or when I think about Christ and what people need to hear. I think it's such an important book for our day and age. So I encourage you. I think it's like $7 if you have an e-reader, or if you find it online. That I encourage you to read it. You won't regret it. So thank you guys, and thank you all for watching. We hope that you enjoyed this episode. Cisco, thank you so much for being with us. It's always great to talk to you. And again, if you are watching on YouTube or Facebook, please, if you have a time to offer a comment, let us know what you want us to talk about, because we're kind of making it up as we go along, but we want to hear what you all want to watch. And so please let us know. And if you're watching on Guadalupe Media television channel, thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next week. Bye.